Hazel Grace Lancaster has just met Augustus Waters and finds herself rather quickly in his basement bedroom. A shelf at my eye level reached all the way around the room, and it was stuffed solid with basketball memorabilia. Dozens of trophies with gold plastic men mid-jump shot, or dribbling, or reaching for a layup toward an unseen basket. There were also lots of signed balls and sneakers. I used to play basketball, he explained. You must have been pretty good. I wasn't bad, but all the shoes and balls are cancer perks. He walked toward the TV where a huge pile of DVDs and video games were arranged into a vague pyramid shape. He bent at the waist and snatched up V for Vendetta. I was like the prototypical white Hoosier kid, he said. I was all about resurrecting the lost art of the mid-range jumper. But then one day I was shooting free throws, just like standing at the foul line at the North Central gym, shooting from a rack of balls. And all at once I couldn't figure out why I was methodically tossing a spherical object through a toroidal object. It seemed like the stupidest thing I could possibly be doing. I started thinking about little kids putting a cylindrical peg through a circular hole and how they do it over and over again for months when they figure it out, and how basketball was basically just like a slightly more aerobic version of the same exercise. Anyway, for the longest time I just kept sinking free throws. I hit like 80 in a row, my all-time best, but as I kept going, I felt more and more like a 2-year-old. And then for some reason I started to think about hurdlers. Are you okay? I'd taken a seat on the corner of his unmade bed. I wasn't trying to be suggestive or anything. I just got kind of tired when I had to stand a lot. I'd stood in the living room, and then there had been the stairs, and then more standing, which was quite a lot of standing for me, and I didn't want to faint or anything. I was a bit of a Victorian lady, fainting-wise. I'm fine, I said, just listening. Hurdlers? Yeah. Hurdlers. I don't know why. I started thinking about them running their hurdle races and jumping over these totally arbitrary objects that had been set in their path. And I wondered if hurdlers ever thought, you know, this would go faster if we just got rid of the hurdles. This was before your diagnosis? I asked. Right, well, there was that too. He smiled with half his mouth. The day of the existentially fraught free throws was coincidentally also my last day of dual-leggedness. I had a weekend between when they scheduled the amputation and when it happened. My own little glimpse of what Isaac is going through. I nodded. I liked Augustus Waters. I really, really liked him. I liked the way his story ended with someone else. I liked his voice. I liked that he took existentially fraught free throws. I liked that he was a tenured professor in the Department of Slightly Crooked Smiles with a dual appointment in the Department of having a voice that made my skin feel more like skin. And I liked that he had 2 names. I've always liked people with 2 names, because you get to make up your mind what you call them. Gus or Augustus. Me, I was always just Hazel. Univalent Hazel. So what's your story? He asked, sitting down next to me at a safe distance. I already told you my story. I was diagnosed when I was... No, not your cancer story. Your story. Interests, hobbies, passions, weird fetishes, etc. I said, don't tell me you're one of those people who becomes their disease. I know so many people like that. It's disheartening. Like, cancer is in the growth business, right? The taking people over business. But surely you haven't let it succeed prematurely. It occurred to me that perhaps I had. I struggled with how to pitch myself to Augustus Waters, which enthusiasms to embrace, and in the silence that followed, it occurred to me that I wasn't very interesting. I'm pretty unextraordinary. I reject that out of hand, he said. Think of something you like, the first thing that comes to mind. Reading? What do you read? Everything, from like hideous romance to pretentious fiction to poetry, whatever. Do you write poetry too? No, I don't write. There! Augustus almost shouted. Hazel Grace, you are the only teenager in America who prefers reading poetry to writing it. This tells me so much. You must read a lot of capital G great books, don't you? I guess. What's your favorite? I said. My favorite book by a wide margin was An Imperial Affliction, but I didn't like to tell people about it. Sometimes you read a book and it fills you with this weird evangelical zeal, and you become convinced that the shattered world will never be put back together unless and until all living humans read the book. And then there are books like An Imperial Affliction, which you can't tell people about. Books so rare and special and yours that advertising your affection feels like a betrayal. It wasn't even that the book was so good or anything. It was just that the author, Peter Van Houten, seemed to understand me in weird and impossible ways. And Imperial Affliction was my book, in the way my body was my body, and my thoughts were my thoughts. Even so, I told Augustus, my favorite book is probably An Imperial Affliction, I said. Does it feature zombies? He asked. No, I said. Stormtroopers? I shook my head. It's not that kind of book. He smiled. I'm going to read this terrible book with the boring title that does not contain stormtroopers, he said. And I immediately felt like I shouldn't have told him about it. Augustus spun around to a stack of books beneath his bedside table. He grabbed a paperback and a pen. As he scribbled an inscription onto the title page, he said, "All I ask in exchange is that you read this brilliant and haunting novelization of my favorite video game." He held up the book, which was called The Price of Dawn. I laughed and took it. Our hands kind of got muddled together in the book handoff, and then he was holding my hand. "Cold," he said, pressing a finger to my pale wrist. "Not cold so much as under-oxygenated," I said. "I love it when you talk medical to me," he said. He stood and pulled me up with him and did not let go of my hand until we reached the stairs. Later, as I put the car into park outside my house, I looked over at him. He really was beautiful. I know boys aren't supposed to be, but he was. "Hazel Grace," he said, my name new and better in his voice. "It has been a real pleasure to make your acquaintance." "Ditto, Mr. Waters," I said. I felt shy looking at him. I could not match the intensity of his water blue eyes. "May I see you again?" he asked. There was an endearing nervousness in his voice. I smiled. "Sure. Tomorrow?" he asked. "Patience, Grasshopper," I counseled. "You don't want to seem overeager." "Right, that's why I said tomorrow," he said. "I want to see you again tonight, but I'm willing to wait all night and much of tomorrow." I rolled my eyes. "I'm serious," he said. "You don't even know me," I said. I grabbed the book from the center console. "How about I call you when I finish this book?" "But you don't even have my phone number," he said. "I strongly suspect you wrote it in the book." He broke out into that goofy smile. "And you say we don't know each other." That's it. Thanks.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Can you turn the live stream on?
It's on.
Oh, good.
But they've been staring at my butt for the last 10 minutes, so I'm gonna move it out here. Just, hold on. Yeah. But I want to talk about video game books versus the kind of capital L literary novels that Hazel embraces. Because I think it says a lot about them as characters, and it also says a lot about the rest of us and what's important and how we organize our lives, which is really what I want to talk about, because I think it's the most interesting thing that we do as people, is make choices about how we're going to organize our lives. But the thing that I want to say at the outset before I talk about the book is that although it often does not feel this way, you choose every moment of your life what to think about. So every moment of your life that you're thinking about, John and Kate plus 8, you're making a choice to think about that. Every moment of your life that you think about Jessica Alba, or you think about, the quality of Justin Timberlake's romantic relationships or anything like that, you're making that choice. And every moment that you think about astrophysics, you're choosing to think about astrophysics. Every single moment of your life, although it often does not feel this way, you are choosing where you focus your attention. And what you choose to focus your attention on is extremely important, because you're going to die. And not only are you going to die, everyone you know and love is going to die, and all of their descendants will die, and there will come a time when there are no human beings to remember that any of us ever did anything. And so any attempt, any idea that you have in your mind that you're going to live your life for some posterity, for some eternality, for some that somehow something that you're going to do in your life will result in your immortality is wrongly based on the idea that the sun is not going to explode. That's very, very important because a lot of the way that I think we orient our lives is toward this idea of leaving a legacy or making a sacrifice or doing something that will result in our being remembered forever. As if the idea of forever is not extremely problematic. Like whenever we think about that stuff, we never think about how incredibly problematic the idea of forever is. And so that's the first thing that I want to say as background. So Gus gives Hazel this video game novelization that she actually turns out to like. It's pretty good video game novelization as video game novelizations go. It's about this guy, Staff Sergeant Max Mayhem, who's always going to war and making wonderful sacrifices on behalf of his team, but then of course at the end he miraculously survives anyway. First-person shooter video games are in many ways like the contemporary epics of our culture. So where the Greeks had the Odyssey, and where Shakespearean age had Romeo and Juliet, our epic, tragic, story is the story of the guy who goes to war and has to make terrible sacrifices in order to save his buddies and or his country. And so when we indulge that fantasy, which I think, by the way, is like totally healthy, and I don't have a problem with it, and I play first-person shooter games, we are buying into a very specific idea of what constitutes heroism and what constitutes like a well-lived life. That the best thing that you can do in this world is a grand, romantic gesture, even if it kills you, that it's worth it to do this big, huge, romantic gesture. And our epics have always told us that, right? Like, Odysseus comes home after like all this time on the road, and he gets back home. For those of you who don't know, I'm talking about this old Greek poem. You don't actually need to know anything about it in order for me to understand the rest of what I'm going to say, but you should read it, it's good. So Odysseus comes home, and like he's been gone for a long, long time. And he comes home and his wife has some suitors who are like hanging out at the house and like eating his food and stealing his money and everything. And he's angry, as anyone would be, but, and then the rivers run with blood because he kills all of them. And that's like the great story of, that's the great epic, that is essentially boiled down the great epic story of antiquity. There's this guy, he fights very heroically in a war, it takes him a very long time to get home. When he does, he kills all of his wife's suitors, and they live happily ever after. Well, that's an extremely inappropriate response to returning home and finding that like you've been gone for many, many years and your wife has some suitors. Of course she does. Like this is there wasn't like a way to like send a telegram or a text message saying, Odysseus here, I'm fine. It's gonna be a while. She thought he was dead, and she had every reason to think that he was dead, and if anything, she should have married one of those guys, and he should have killed all the other suitors. Or if you look at the epic story of Romeo and Juliet, you again see a grand gesture. You see a star-crossed love story that's played out not on a small screen, but on the biggest possible screen. This big screen of family strife. And it's always about politics or war or these big families who don't love each other or whatever it is. It's never about the thing that circumscribes almost all of our lives, which is disease. Or the thing that limits us in every way, every single day of our lives. Like every time we wash our hands, we're doing that because, well, which you should do. We're doing that because we're afraid of disease. Like, thousands and thousands of times a day, we circumscribe our behavior because we are aware that there is this thing that haunts us and will eventually come and get us and kill us. But we don't make our romantic epics about it because there's nothing glorious about dying or being sick from disease. There's nothing like romantic, capital R romantic, about that. And I wanted to try to write a story that was capital R romantic, that was about the thing that limits almost all of our lives, which is not like whether or not we're going to jump on this grenade to save our buddies, but how we are going to find little ways in our lives to be meaningful to the other people who are here with us now, and little ways to be kind to them and to try to protect the people who are here now and the people who will come after us as best we can. And I want to speak very briefly before I bring up my brother to talk more about heroism, about, I don't know where he is, about my, sort of how this book came to be. I worked for about 5 months in 2000, so 12 years ago, as a chaplain, a student chaplain at a children's hospital in Ohio. And while I was doing that work, I learned a couple of things. The first thing was that I did not want to become an ordained minister, which was important. And then the second thing was that I really, really wanted to write a story that was about the kinds of sick kids I was meeting at the hospital. Which is to say that I was not meeting kids who were tragic cases. I was meeting kids, thank you, Elise, who were humans. And who were quite a lot like any of the other teenagers that I hang out with. That sounded creepy. So the image of the person suffering from cancer, not just children, but particularly children, is that they are these sad, wise-eyed creatures who know the secret to the meaning of life because they've been forced to stare deeply into the abyss, and they've come back and they have some kind of knowledge that is not available to the rest of us. Well, that's not true. And I wanted to write a story that was really, really funny in the same way that the kids I knew were really, really funny, and that found a way to be unsentimental in the way that the kids I knew were unsentimental, and angry in the way that they were angry, and that wouldn't, you know, like all of the kids that I knew who had cancer were super conscious of the cancer kid cliches, and while, you know, some of them applied, others of them didn't, and they, you know, that tension was always really interesting to me. But for the first 8 years that I tried to write this story, I failed miserably, partly because there was this dashingly handsome hospital chaplain character in all of my stories, who was also an alcoholic and was like trying to manage his drinking while also seducing this gorgeous young doctor. It was like a terrible Grey's Anatomy. And I wasn't able to really find a way into the story until I met Esther Earle, a young nerd fighter and reader of my books who had terminal cancer. And when I met her, although I didn't know it at the time, and then over the course of the next 3 years, I grew to know her and be very good friends with her and be close to a lot of her closest friends in our community. And it wasn't so much Esther's illness that was an inspiration to me, it was Esther's empathy. I think what I needed was to meet an empathetic teenager. I say that lovingly. I was not an empathetic teenager. It's very, very difficult to imagine what it's like to be other people, but it's particularly difficult when you are only beginning to understand and imagine what it's like to be yourself. And in Esther, I met a really empathetic teenager, and I also met someone who did not take to any of the cliches of young cancer survivors, including, by the way, the phrase cancer survivor. And you know, Esther's empathy and her sense of humor and her you know, fear and all of that became very close to me because because she and I were close to each other. I want to make it very clear that Hazel, the girl in the book, is not Esther, and I want to make that particularly clear since Esther is not here to defend herself against, you know, horrible accusations like that she enjoys America's Next Top Model. But there is no way that I ever could have written this story without Esther, and her legacy is so strong in our community, and that's one of the reasons that tonight you can donate to The Star Won't Go Out, and up to $500 your donations will be matched by Hank and myself, and you guys have a lot to live up to because in New York and Boston they raised more than $2,400. So, no pressure. So I want to talk more about heroism and video games and the desire that we all have to be remembered. But unfortunately, I feel that that would best be done in the form of song, and many of you may know that I am not a very good singer. You don't have to say, aw, it's a fact. So it is now my pleasure to bring to the stage the founding editor of EcoGeek, the world's most famous environmental technology website. He is the creator of the Project for Awesome, YouTube's annual charity event. The co-founder of DFTBA Records. He is a Billboard charting artist. And in 1998, his classmates at Winter Park High School voted him Best Dancer. Ladies and gentlemen, Hank Green!
Just these people. Okay. How about you with the camera in front here? Excellent. Fantastic. She's doing good. This song is about my brother's new book, The Fault in Our Stars. I wrote it. I wrote it. I'm gonna keep talking, but I'm not going to now. It's an imagined conversation between these two star-crossed folks. And so you just got to hear John read from the perspective of a teenage girl. Now you get to hear me sing from the perspective of one. And of course, Hazel would never write poetry, but here I go, putting words in her mouth. Sorry. It's called Video Game Books. We all can dream of blazing glories, but all I dream of now is you and your blue eyes. It's strange how we can feel like we don't live our own lives. I wasn't sure about my own, but now I'm feeling fine. Your video game books, they might give me funny looks, but Staff Sergeant Max Mayhem gets me high. And I'm starting to see not just what you want from me, but what you want to get from what you've got. Now what do you think you're gonna be? You think you'll leave some kind of lasting mark? Well, with infinite tomorrows, and no, this isn't fair. No one gets remembered, but right now I just don't care. Your video game books, they might get me funny looks, but Staff Sergeant Max Mayhem gets me high. And I'm starting to see not just what you want from me, but what you want to get from what you got. There's not a line of amputee heroes in history. I wish our lives were so much simpler, and I hope you get to have your moment in the fight, but no one ever gets to be quite who they want to be. You want it to matter, boy, well, you matter to me. Your video game books, they Might get me funny looks, but Staff Sergeant Max Mayhem gets me hot. And I'm starting to see not just what you want from me, but what you want to get from what you've got. There's not a line of amputee heroes in history, but I got one sitting right in front of me.
Did you like it? Hold on, the people on the live stream are just staring like right here. Oh yeah, push it up a little. There's a delay. So here it comes. There, you did it. Good. That was good. This song is about another book. One that doesn't exist, unfortunately. A lot of people I know. Wait a second. Nope. Okay.
No, I'm not the only one who wants to know more about Harry's sons. I really do think there's an unwritten story, and I think it's time to put fingers to keys. A lot of people I know want to know more about Grindelwald and Dumbledore. I really do think that they both bad and lefty, and I think there's probably a good story there. For book 8, I want a book 8. I want a book 8. And I want J.K. Rowling to say that the epilogue was crap, cause we all know it was crap. And I want J.K. Rowling to say that Voldemort had a son, and the story's just begun. And I want J.K. Rowling to say that she's written book 8. A lot of people I know want to hear the tale of that mysterious veil. I really do think it's a dimensional portal, and I think Sirius is in Middle-earth. I know I want to hear the one about Hagrid's dad and Hagrid's mom. I really do think that that's nearly impossible. I think there's probably a good story there. For book 8. I want a book 8. I want a book 8. And I want J.K. Rowling to say that the epilogue was crap, cause we all know it was crap. And I want J.K. Rowling to say that Voldemort had a son, and the story's just begun. And I want J.K. Rowling to say that she's writing book 8. She could call it Harry Potter and the Pillar of Storchay, or Harry Potter and the Starfighters of Adjumar, or Harry Potter and the Knights who say me, or Harry Potter and the Time Lord fight the Daleks, Harry Potter and... Usually they make you scream longer for that one, but she wanted to hear what I said. That was nice of you. Or Harry Potter and the DC area Nerdfighting. I want a book 8. Oh, Harry Potter. I really do think there's an unwritten story. I think it's time to put fingers to keys for book 8. Lights shining on your face and you can't see anybody? This is crazy. I can see you all now. We do the wave? John doesn't get to see me. This song is about quarks. A quark is a fundamental constituent of matter, observed in 1968 through deep elastic scatter. We found that protons aren't as simple as we thought. We thought they were solid particles, but they are not. Protons, in fact, are made up of 3 separate pieces. It just gets more confusing as our knowledge increases, and that is what a quark is. It's a piece of a proton, and they also make up other things, including a neutron. Oh, up, down, strange, John, top, bottom. If you don't know what a quark is, it don't matter, you still got them. And with leptons and bosons, unless something's amiss, they make up everything that we can see and that we know exists. You guys are awesome. Things made up of quarks, including protons and neutrons, are composite particles that physicists call hadrons. Many types of hadrons are theoretically described, but most exist for only very brief amounts of time. Quarks have electric charge, color, charge, mass, and spin, and having color charge means they exist solely inside of other kinds of particles and cannot exist alone, which is why quarks have never been studied on their own. Oh, up, down, strange, John, top, bottom. If you don't know what a quark is, it don't matter, you still got them. And with leptons and bosons, unless something's amiss, they make up everything that we can see and that we know exists. These tiny bits of matter are part of almost everything, and there is no unified theory to make it less confusing. But the fact that we've identified that they exist at all is so remarkable that I am constantly in awe. Oh, up, down, strange, John, top, bottom. If you don't know what a quark is, it don't matter, you still got them. And with leptons and bosons, unless something's amiss, they make up everything that we can see and that we know exists. They make up everything that we can see and that we know exists. They make up everything that we can see and that we know exists.
I do want to say something briefly to the parents who are here. Like, how great is it that your kids are singing songs about quarks? All the things they could be singing about. I want to make a few announcements and also thank some special guests who are here tonight now. As you can see, and as Hank Sonk and Politics and Prose have all pointed out, there are a number of people here.
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I. A full commitment's what I'm thinking of. You wouldn't get this from any other guy. I wanna tell you how I'm feeling. I gotta make you understand. I'm never gonna give you up. I'm never gonna let you down. I'm never gonna run around and desert you. I'm never gonna make you cry. I'm never gonna say goodbye. I'm never gonna tell a lie or hurt you. Give you up. Give you up. Never gonna give you up. I'm never gonna run around and desert you. I'm not gonna make you cry. I'm not gonna say goodbye. I'm not gonna tell a lie or hurt you.
So on the internet, that's called Rick rolling. Or heck rolling in our community. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to answer your questions about The Fault in Our Stars. If I go over my allotted time, I will be shocked. Not a joke.
Oh, do I want a video for this? Do you have a space?
And
Yeah,
I don't know how to make
I
it
don't know
start.
if I have enough battery. You don't have to. Yeah. Maybe, yeah. Because it's live streamed. Exactly.
I got it now, I got it, pick it up. Okay, so I'm going to take your questions about The Fault in Our Stars, not about other things, and no spoilers. Well, I mean, I guess you can also ask about my other books, but there will be time later for other questions that you may have. So this is a book-specific question time. Yes, and the striped shirt. Boston and New York, so I don't even know what I have to do. This does not look fun.
Oh, hey, Charlie's so cool. Charlie's that.
Oh no.
I have no regrets about answering your questions.
I'm gonna play one of the songs that someone just shouted out. Not because they shouted it out, but because in fact it is the next thing on this paper that means. Put on my vest, because John was dressed up. Yay, vest! Raise your hand if you're wearing a vest. Just one. I'm also wearing a vest. Over here. You're hard to see. Sorry. What's up? He said it. You heard what he said, didn't you? We're over, so go fast. Double speed song. No.
You want us to think that you're just messing around, yeah. You play your life like it's a game of two hands up. You think if you screw up that you will never live it down. And it won't matter if you suck if you don't take it serious. But the time I really love you is when you're up there on the floor. And I can see it in your eyes that you just don't care anymore. When making a mistake is just a chance you gotta take. You gotta shake your booty, shake your booty, shake your booty. You gotta shake your booty, shake your booty, shake, shake. If you love the way you live and while you dance, you know the whole world will be at your feet. Nothing ever happens if you never take a chance. And as long as you live like this, you'll never be complete. Cause the time I really love you is when you're up there on the floor. We're making a mistake, it's just a chance you gotta take. You gotta shake your booty, shake your booty, shake your booty. Yeah, you gotta shake your booty, shake your booty, shake, shake. Shake your booty, oh yeah, shake your booty. Shake your booty, yeah, shake your booty. We're making a mistake, it's just a chance you gotta take. You gotta shake your booty, shake your booty, shake your booty. You gotta shake your booty. Well, I can tell you want this life, and I can tell you want it back. Can you tell me that this is the most fun you've ever had? Well, life can always be like this. I got to let you know that you could have it all inside if you could only let it go. Everybody sucks, yeah. We all make mistakes, but no one can shake your booty like you shake it, shake, shake. Shake a booty, oh yeah, shake a booty. Shake a booty, yeah, shake a booty. Shake a making a mistake is just a chance you gotta take. You gotta shake a booty, shake a booty, shake a booty. You gotta shake a booty, shake a booty, shake, shake.
I almost said the thing that wedding DJ say. Thank you, dancers. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's nice to hear that I am welcome.
Hey, you get out.
I hate this place. I can barely keep the misery off my face. Yeah, there's one place I'd much rather be. Taking transfiguration and arithmancy and hanging with my friends in the Albury. But instead I'm learning parts of speech and trying not to fall asleep and avoiding the only girl in school who might like me. It's so grotesque when the guy sitting next to you drools all over his desk. But as I read it explain, I realized that I wanna be doing the same, so I put my head down on my desk as well. And suddenly I'm learning a spell to make my teacher's head swell, but then he wakes me up and I can't help but yell, Incordio! This isn't Hogwarts, this is a concrete box, and the pictures on the wall are never gonna talk, and the teachers don't care that the kids don't try. The most magical thing we have is fluorescent lights, and they don't put you in Hufflepuff if you're not cool. Instead they sort you in the parking lot after school. And I think if I looked into the mirror of Erised, I'd be wearing wizard robes with gold and red. Well, I'm not saying I'm about to be a nerd. But high school ain't no place for a wizard. Now public school ain't no place for a wizard. You know what's gross? When the lunch soggy toast. But as I ate it anyway, I overheard this guy I hardly know calling me a nerd. So I cast up the zipper on him inside my mind. How I wish they were house elves making my food, and everything was perfectly spiced, and the only one being rude was the poltergeist. And here's what's true: I'd do pretty much anything to go to wizard school. I'd even call the Dolores Umbridge my friend if it meant I never had to go to gym again. And I look around at all of this crap, it's part of my life. No ghosts stalking the halls or hanging in the bathroom stalls. And the stairs don't move cause there's no stairs at all. This isn't Hogwarts, this is a concrete box. And the pictures on the wall are never gonna talk. And the teachers don't care that the kids don't try. And the most magical thing we have is fluorescent lights. And they don't put you in Hufflepuff if you're not cool. Instead they throw you in the parking lot after school. And I think if I looked into the mirror of Erised, I'd be wearing wizard robes with gold and red. Well, I'm not saying I'm not proud to be a nerd, but public school ain't no place for a wizard. No, high school ain't no place for a wizard.
I was just talking to those people over there. Rolling a picture of an anglerfish. I was saying, we'll get there. So I think I'm gonna play another song about Harry Potter unless there's some objections to that.
If you say so. I'm getting kind of tired of this pre-publication media place. You got all of Muddle kind under your spell. Don't you know the whole book already gone and reserved a copy yet?
What? What's the bookstore?
Politics and Bros. Reserved a copy yet? Politics and Bros. How many more books could you sell? Now give me my book or go to hell. Cause I need Harry Potter like a grain below needs water. And that Saturday approaches my Negro. Whoa, Osseo, Deathly Hallows, Incendio, book sales and bars. It'll be like Phoenix tears on a broken nose. Yeah, Osseo, Deathly Hallows. Well, I'm getting kind of petrified. Lord Ron knew the Hermione died, or if Voldemort killed Hedwig just for us. I have no confidence in theories about the Half-Blood Prince, and what if Harry's brain is a Horcrux? Holy crap, that would freaking suck! Cause I need Harry Potter like a grain below needs water, and as the day approaches my Negro. Whoa, Osseo, Deathly Hallows, Incendio, book sales and bars. It'll be like Phoenix tears on a broken nose. Yeah, Osseo, Deathly Hallows. Whatever's in the sleeves of J.K. Rowling, I bet it to fix it. Breakably bound to protect that pure blood plus space Malfoy. But in the end, I don't think it's gonna matter if Snape's good or if he's bad, because the weight of the whole world rests on our boy. Yeah, the weight of the world rests on our boy. Cause we need Harry Potter like a grain below needs water, and as the day approaches my Negro. Oh, Osseo, Deathly Hallows, Incendio, book sales and bars. It'll be like Phoenix tears on a broken nose. Yeah, Osseo, Deathly Hallows. Oh, Osseo, Deathly Hallows. But mostly I'm just feeling sad. You know, I knew this could end real bad. Wish it didn't have to end at all. Yeah, I wish it didn't have to end at all. Cause I couldn't care more about Harry Potter if Hogwarts was my alma mater. And as Saturday approaches my Negro. Yeah, Osseo, Deathly Hallows,
worry, I'm not going to sing. Well, you know, unless you beg for an encore. All right, play the song.
Yes, it's true that I once went through life as a guy who always had to run like this. Strike is burning, I was burning through it all. I feel like that. But it's not about whether he gets back, how slow the knife gets turned. You guys distracted me. I was too cool, I forgot. No, you can keep dancing. Just tell me the words. But my friend, I found an animal who doesn't feel his pain and my life pattern is because you can't eat the knife, you avoid without light, you can't eat the dish. You've only ever eaten fish, you can't feel alone if it's all you've ever known. Have the reason to be happy when they have the freaking idea. What else to be? The deep-sea dwelling in Lurkers are fast to find a mate. They are always there together when it's time to procreate. See, wonder night, a young male likes a female on her side, and then slowly he becomes a sperm-producing parasite. And if we could say he lives it all, he lives it till she dies, and until that day he literally never leaves her side. You can't eat the knife, you life without life, you can't eat the dish. You've only ever eaten fish, and you can't feel alone if it's all you've ever known. Yeah, the deep-sea anglerfish had no reason to be happy, but it had a big idea. What else to be?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight to our show in Washington. Thanks to everyone here at the hotel for hosting Nerdfighters. Thanks to Politics and Prose, the best bookstore in America. And thanks to each and every one of you for being awesome. We will remind you that you can buy Hank's new album and his old albums at the DFTBA merch booth, as well as my books. I've written a few other than The Fault in Our Stars. And you can also donate to This Star Won't Go Out. Your donations up to $500 will be matched by us tonight. So thank you in advance for your donations. We also want to say again, sorry that the signing line, if you feel rushed, but you should feel rushed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you, and as we say in our hometown, don't forget to be awesome.
You simply do not feel what is always there. I ask my brain to entertain, the pain is the same. That if I feel it all the time, can you really call it pain? I don't have any friends and I don't have any hair, but neither does the anglerfish and she doesn't care. Oh, you can't eat the knife, you can't eat the dish, you've only ever eaten, you can't feel alone if it's all you've ever known. The deep-sea anglerfish has no reason to be happy, but it has a big idea. What else to be? Be the man who goes along with you. And when I get drunk, yeah, you know I'm gonna be the man who gets drunk next to you. And if I ever, yeah, you know I'm gonna be the man who's favoring to you. 'Cause I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more to be the man who walk 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. When I'm lonely, yeah, you know I'm gonna be the man who's lonely without you. And when I'm dreaming, yeah, you know I'm gonna dream about the times that I'm with you. And when I come home, yeah, you know I'm gonna be the man who comes back home to you. And when I go out, yeah, you know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. 'Cause I will walk 500 miles and I will walk 500 more just to be the man who walks 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. just to be the man to walk 1,000 miles to fall down at your door.